WTH News Network. I'm Michael Krell.
I'm Marta Krell.
And we got viewer mail. Person says, who are these people?
Who are these people?
But more specifically, what is your background in journalism? I think I said at the beginning of our first broadcast, Marta has a long history in journalism, and I have a long history in extreme independent journalism. And the person wanted to know, what's that all mean? So you first.
So I've got about 15 years in news. I was the editor-in-chief of my college newspaper, and then moved to Santa Cruz and was the editor-in-chief of the local paper there, weekly. Focused a lot on entertainment, but we did some news too. And then I moved over to the daily paper, where I was a full-time copy editor, and that paper was owned by Dow Jones. So that's my experience.
So, kids, it is actual paper that contain the news.
Yeah, and I wrote headlines as
Yes.
part of it.
And I was going to ask about that. I know you saw some crazy shit.
I saw pictures from 9/11 that nobody should ever see. Like we get them from the AP, and they in big letters they're like warning graphic content. I don't know why they even send it, because you're not really allowed to post it, but it's for us to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've seen a lot.
Well, I remember they used to early in the internet, probably I think it was during the Second Gulf War. You could access the Reuters raw footage feed, and you just watched it. It was just raw footage, and then the news agencies would pick it up, put voiceovers on it, put graphics on it, and that would be their story. But if you knew where to look, you had access to the graphic footage.
And I tend to have a little bit of a whimsical twist on my commentary. That's just my personality. But I actually know my shit, and I'm pretty serious about it. So I wanted to throw that out there.
What was your favorite headline that you wrote?
Oh God, there's a couple. I almost said Beavis Butthead. Bush Davis Buttheads in California. I had that one.
That one went viral for what viral.
It was on the
then.
Tonight Show. Jay Leno held it up, and then another one was odds stack up for the downtown committee. That was when the chief of police threatened to bloody my nose. So that was a good moment.
As an extreme leftist, activist, independent media in that town, we considered her paper the right-wing paper. The man, and when the chief of police said he wanted to bloody her nose, I think that's when I fell in love, because I want to bloody my nose many a time, but. Yeah,
we have that in common.
And then that particular headline that she wrote got picked up by all of my activist friends. It said odds mount against downtown committee.
No.
You said
odds stack up against downtown committee.
And
the subhead underneath said majority calls police public enemy number one. This
was on flyers and zines and bumper stickers,
and you got to remember, like, I'm a professional. This is my job. I'm not on anybody's side. My headline reflected what was in the story. It doesn't matter how I feel about the police, but that's what the story said, and that's what my headline said. But his people got all like excited about it.
We were under the Industrial Workers of the World. We were trying to unionize Kinko's before it was FedEx Express or whatever. So we had no shortage of free propaganda. Free anything we wanted printed, we got done for free. Now, like I said, come from extreme independent media. In those days, that was pirate radio. We had one radical national station, the Pacifica Network, and they were the most radical of the radical. But at one point during, we became the longest pirate in the country, Free Radio Santa Cruz, network of independent media. I remember the first one, it was called first one we received from an independent network was called Making Contact. And it was a nationally done news show. It had like little 10-minute news pieces. It came every month. You got a cassette tape in the mail, and then you run it over the pirate radio station and put it on. And several small networks like that popped up. And then eventually we did have MP2s and WAV files off the internet. And then we would get them from independent news that way. And then slowly the internet took over. But there was a time during the 90s when the Pacific networks got taken over by some right-wingers, and they locked Democracy Now! Out of the studio. Probably one of the only shows still on the Pacifica network from back then is still Democracy Now! To this day. Locked them out. Just locked them out of the studio for like a month. It was controversial as hell. We built a network to keep them on the air. They were being broadcast on pirate radio stations all over the country. So that was extreme independent media back then. I don't even know how many years we ran before we actually got raided by the FCC, but I do recall it was when George W. Bush was running for his second term. That's when they showed up, and they showed up all over the country raiding pirate radio stations. Like me, the stuff I'd been expecting my whole career in pirate radio, armed FCC agents showing up and raiding shit. We've been waiting for that for like 10 years. They finally showed up under Bush, and they raided stations all over the country, but it's too late. By then, we were on the internet too. And everybody, all of the pirate radio stations were streaming. To this day, Free Radio Santa Cruz is streaming. I don't know if they're still broadcasting. Yeah. So extreme independent media in my day involved committing a crime to get the word out.
So we're basically on, I guess, different sides of the same coin. I mean, I worked for mainstream media, even though I personally am liberal, but I couldn't really bring that into my job if I could help it. So,
I mean, the paper was being run by a born-again Christian, and she would show up to work with a shirt that says, "My heart belongs to Satan." Yeah. But she was just that good.
I didn't know at the time when I wore it that he taught Sunday school. I didn't know.
But she was just that good. You know, it didn't matter what her views were. Her work was impeccable.
And I was the only woman in a department of 10 salty, surly men, and I fucking loved it. Nobody touched me. Nobody gave me a hard time. They saw my work and they respected it. And the best job ever.
Did you ever get a yell, "Stop the presses"?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time?
Yeah. Every night I'd go down and check, be like the last set of eyes. I mean, the only time you really wanted to stop the presses at that point is if you saw a headline that said "fuck." Like, that's when you stop the presses. Like, it has to be something really big for you to, which I actually never saw a headline that said "fuck," but you know, it had to be a pretty egregious error to make, because all these guys are union. It's late. They want to go home. You're not going to tell them to stop everything unless there's a really good reason. So.
Well, and then later in the game, I think we might have been kind of living together by then. I got a paper route at this paper. And she would finish her work around 11, 12, whenever the paper was done.
Midnight, usually.
She'd come down and get in the passenger seat and start folding papers and throwing them in the back. While I drove the route, throwing them out the window all over the mountains. We got stuck in many a hairy place where you heard banjos and stuff. It was cute. But she's the only person in her department that had black hands from the ink. Most of those people never actually touched the copy, but you know, after a night of that, your hands were covered in that ink. Interesting times.
So that's who we are.
That's us. We are the WTH News Network. Be sure and like, subscribe, bell. See you next time.